Discover the amazing resilience of this grandma who transformed tragedy into surprising revenue. Edna Baxter clutched the worn quilt top in her hands, its frayed edges tender against her trembling palms. Just days before, she had faced the unnerving reality of her youngest son's funeral, the intoxicating scent of freshly cooked meals now replaced with the suffocating weight of loss. The quilt whispered memories, a shared warmth, laughter, and stories sewn into each patch, and yet, now, it mocked her with every stitch that held together a shattered life. Could she really turn this pain into something manageable, something profitable? The question gnawed at her, a relentless ache that made her head spin. Doubts brewed within her. For years, she had given everything to her family, pouring love and care into every meal, every hug, and every moment spent with her children. But without Simon, the youngest, there was a void, a silence that echoed through their home like a haunting melody. Grief clung to Edna, a heavy blanket she could not cast aside. This new path of creating quilts stirred a fragile ember of hope, yet fear tightened its grip, questioning her worth. She sank into the old wooden chair that had weathered lifetimes of hardships, and within the fragmented silence of her empty living room, thoughts whirlpooled around her. Would she be seen as nothing more than a hobbyist? An underling to the brash sellers at the market? Panic coursed through her. What if her quilts were destined to be resented not only by her son but by the world beyond? As her heart raced, a tightening in her throat made it hard to breathe. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every thread she pulled, a growing sense of urgency electrified her fingertips. There was a fire igniting with each quilt she fashioned. But darker thoughts lurked in the corners, whispers of inadequacy clawing at her resolve. The home she had painted with love was now painted with fear. What if the trepidation of her son shadowed the confidence she was desperately trying to build? Would Dan resent her for stepping into the unfamiliar, armed only with the memories of a late child's laughter? It was overwhelming. Then came the challenge, an opportunity that threatened to unravel her fragile thread. A rival quilt maker appeared, loud and brash, tearing apart Edna's heart with every dismissive remark about her craft. Just a hobbyist, he sneered, eyes rolling as crowds clung to his slick marketing. The words tormented Edna, sinking into her psyche and amplifying the doubts of her son's indifference. Was she then just a storyteller of fabric begging for validation? Betwixt those tattered memories, Edna stood at a crossroads where love and grief intertwined like the brightly colored threads in her quilts. She realized she was stitching together her identity to reclaim lost joy, yet the brilliant hues surrounding her darkened with every piece of fabric, every specific thread of her reality. Unsure if her art could withstand the weight of these expectations, Edna clutched the needle tighter, bracing herself. Would she have the strength to journey beyond everyone's scrutiny, even her own? As the day of her first major order loomed closer, so did the bittersweet reminder of love lost and a family that now fell fragmented. The weight of expectation turned heavier, and yet Edna knew she needed to transform her grief into resilience, an act that might either bind her family closer or tear it away irreparably. Every stitch she made was a step toward clarity, and she found herself racing toward a truth she had long avoided, a truth that could redefine everything, not only for her but also for her family. Standing at that precipice, Edna struggled to breathe, knowing that the choice she made could alter the very fabric of their existence. Edna stared at the quilt spread out before her, a patchwork of colors mirroring the conflict swirling within her. Each vibrantly stitched square held memories of happier days, days filled with Simon's laughter. But now, the fabric felt heavier, not just with reminders of love, but with the weight of expectations that loomed ominously over her like storm clouds ready to burst. In that moment, she questioned everything. Could she truly succeed? Could her creations evoke the kind of recognition that would drown out the whispers of inadequacy? Days bled into nights, and with each passing hour, she wrestled with her growing anxiety and self-doubt. The order for the quilt that could define her venture was due soon. As the deadline crept closer, vivid doubts clawed at her sanity. She could hear her rival's sneering accusations echoing in her mind, a constant reminder of the limitations she feared were inherent to her craft. It felt as if she stood on the precipice of despair. Then, as if fated, she stumbled upon an old, tattered scrapbook filled with photos of her past creations. The sight pulled her back through time. Each image fluttered memories of crafting late into the night, the thrill of creating something beautiful from humble materials, and the joy of seeing a smile bloom on a loved one's face as they received her handiwork. A kernel of knowledge germinated within her, a revelation buried beneath layers of sorrow. She recalled not only the time spent sewing but the emotional energy she had poured into her art. In that moment, a strategy began to form. Rather than viewing the opposing remarks as criticism, she decided to see them as fuel. What if she could inject her pain into her work? The concept of grief could transform. It tethered her to reality yet also propelled her toward artistic innovation. This new quilt wouldn't be a simple creation, it would be a tapestry of her heart, frail in places, yet strong in resilience. With newfound focus, Edna dedicated long hours to the craft. She meticulously selected fabric reminiscent of Simon's smile, colors that captured the essence of joy intertwined with loss. The sewing machine whirred rhythmically, it became a source of solace amid the chaos of her emotions. This project transcended mere profitability. It had become her sanctuary, a sanctuary where each stitch brought her closer to inner peace. As expected, the pain surged at times, creeping back in to remind her of what had been lost. But each time it did, she countered with determination. In her heart, she cradled a small yet powerful belief growing stronger: art was a reflection of her soul, a declaration that she lived on despite the heavy weight of sorrow. Things shifted rapidly. Word of her quilt began to spread, slowly but steadily, drawing eyes to her work. Encouragement seeped in from unexpected corners, including a few neighbors who began to offer their support. Still, part of her hesitated, fearing that her moment of progress could be snatched away by the looming deadline or the treachery of failure that so shadowed her work. Edna stood before the finished quilt, feeling both jubilant and anxious. She had poured her grief and love into this piece. She whispered a silent prayer that it might resonate with someone else, that they too would find solace in her creation. Yet an immediate confrontation lay ahead the moment she would have to reveal what she had created to the world. Would they understand? Would they honor her journey? As she prepared for that first showcase, a familiar voice intruded, ripe with skepticism. Just a hobbyist, it echoed again, fueling the uncertainty that simmered beneath her resolve. Edna clenched her fists. The time had come to face not only her rival but also her deepest insecurities and to embrace the woman she was becoming, one stitch at a time. The thrill of impending confrontation washed over her, while the urge to retreat battled her determination. Would her quilt's essence shine brighter than her doubts? With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders. The unveiling awaited. Edna inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest like an unyielding wall. The quilt, vibrant and heartfelt, faced a world that could be unkind, and she was on the verge of its unveiling. As she stepped into the gallery space, a kaleidoscope of reactions formed in her mind. Would they see her pain, her courage, woven into each intricate stitch, or would they dismiss her just as her rival had done? The hall hummed with chatter, an orchestra of voices weaving stories about their own lives, their own struggles. Yet amid this diversity, she felt as if she stood on an island, isolated by her uncertainty. Her gaze flickered over the crowd, and she noticed familiar faces of neighbors who had offered words of encouragement. Their smiles awakened something deep within her, a reminder that vulnerability often invites connection. With a subtle nod to her inner self stronger now, the corner of her mouth curled into a cautious smile. The quilt had absorbed her essence. It felt less like an object and more like an extension of her spirit. Each row stitched held a memory, a tear, and a glimpse of hope. This was not merely a quilt, it was her story, told through fabric and thread. As the speaker called her name, the crowd hushed. Edna took tentative steps forward, her heart racing in a syncopation of fear and determination. The spotlight felt blazing, exposing every crease of her apprehension. She glanced back at her quilt, bold and beautiful, and for the first time in weeks, a surge of confidence coursed through her. She breathed deeply, channeling the persistence that had pulled her from the depths of doubt. "Hello, everyone," her voice trembled, yet wove itself into clarity. "I'm Edna. This quilt, it has been a journey." A pause, each breath sharpened with purpose. "It's filled with my love, my grief, and my desire to transform tragedy into something beautiful." The audience leaned in, their interest piqued. Edna felt the shift, a change from judgment to empathy, from detachment to connection. Encouraged, she continued, weaving in tales behind the fabrics, the colors chosen for their resonance with her life alongside Simon. She detailed how every dark corner of her quilt echoed sorrow, while the lighter hues captured the flickers of joy intertwined within her memories. As she spoke, Edna glimpsed her rival lurking at the edge of the room. Instinctively, her heart raced, doubts churning anew. She met the woman's gaze, recalling the sneering echo that had haunted her for weeks. Yet instead of fear, she found a kind of strength within herself, a quiet defiance that rose like a tide. "I am not just a hobbyist," she silently proclaimed, firm in purpose. The world faded into the backdrop as she embraced her narrative. Each word became a stitch binding her journey to that of her audience. The quilt transformed, it was no longer just a piece of art, it became a bridge linking her story to theirs. Faces softened, some filled with tears, others with smiles of understanding. As Edna finished her heartfelt presentation, a long silence enveloped the room. Finally, a single clap emerged, quickly turning into a wave of applause. The cheers washed over her, propelling her spirit higher, reverberating within her like a drum. Relief and exhilaration collided, sending adrenaline coursing through her veins. But just as she began to bask in the warm glow of acceptance, an unexpected challenge arose. "How can you be so brave?" came a voice from within the crowd, laced with doubt. "Isn't it easier to forget the pain?" The question hung in the air, a stark reminder that her journey was still far from over. Did she truly have the strength to confront the truth that lay beneath that query? Edna felt a shudder run through her. This was a turning point. Would she shrink back into her insecurities or rise to reaffirm her resilience? This moment called for more than courage, it demanded a revelation of deeper truths she had not yet unearthed. As she stood before the crowd, a fiery resolve ignited within. The next chapter of her journey awaited. Ready to explore the fine lines between vulnerability and power, as she embraced the woman she was yet to fully understand. It was time to discover not only how to display her art but to articulate her truths, unflinchingly. Edna's heart thundered in her chest, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation surging through her. The weight of the question she had just faced became an anchor, forcing her to dig deeper, to unearth the motivations fluttering beneath her surface. Did she truly want to forget the pain? Or was embracing it the key to her growth? Suddenly, the applause felt distant, the warmth of acceptance overshadowed by the sharp clarity of her vulnerability. As the crowd began to disperse, voices mingling into an indistinct hum, she found herself alone with her thoughts. The quilt, which had held her spirit aloft just moments ago, now assumed a more substantial presence, as if demanding answers. She touched its fabric, the textures a reminder of the threads that bound her alive with emotion. Each fiber was a testament not just to suffering, but to survival and defiance. The encounter with her rival lingered in the back of her mind, tangled with the question posed. What had fueled her rival's disdain? Was it jealousy of her newfound voice, or a reflection of her own inadequacies? Edna struggled to reconcile the two sides of this inquiry, wedging her potential growth between them. Through this struggle, a sense of purpose began to unfurl. With renewed determination, Edna sought a moment of quiet reflection, not out of fear, but to foster the courage needed for a confrontation. The crowded gallery floated away, leaving only the cool touch of her quilt and the sanctuary of her thoughts. She envisioned speaking again, not just to fill the silence, but to shed light on the shadows creeping around her heart. The next day, Edna returned to her sewing studio, a sanctuary of creativity where her thoughts could thread together with meticulous care. She meticulously arranged fabrics, colors overlapping, each piece a metaphorical exploration of her emotional landscape. It was in these moments of creation that she felt invigorated, ready to face her inner conflicts through art. A clear vision took shape, a series of pieces that not only told her story, but also voiced the very questions enveloping her. The first would address the reality of pain, but also offer glimpses of hope that spoke to transformation. She considered her fabric choices, dark blues for sorrow, golden yellows for resilience. Edna wanted to visually answer the query, isn't it easier to forget? Each stitch became a moment of clarity, an opportunity to confront her deepest fears. She poured her energy into the artistic process, immersing herself into an ocean of emotion. With every needle and thread movement, she uncovered layers of her past, revisiting memories that had shaped her present. The wisdom gained from each remembrance became her guide, teaching Edna about the beauty within vulnerability. As days morphed into nights, Edna developed a series of interconnected quilts, each revealing a facet of her evolution. Yet, as the works took form, another tension brewed within her: would she display them publicly? The vulnerability of showcasing her deeper truths felt daunting. What if she faced rejection again? The worry clung like a shadow, teasing her resolve. But with each passing day, the answer to that nagging question about bravery began to solidify in her mind. Real courage, she discovered, lay not in forgetting pain but in laying it bare, an invitation for understanding and connection. The risk of vulnerability spoke to something profound within her, and she felt irrevocably drawn to embrace it. As Edna prepared for an upcoming exhibition, nerve and excitement lived side by side within her heart. The time had come not only to showcase her art but to engage with the world that lay outside her quilted cocoon. She couldn't shake the sense of impending confrontation, a lingering depth awaiting resolution. The event loomed ahead, whispering challenges and revealing uncharted depths. Edna felt a fiery aspiration ignite once more. Boundaries were meant to be crossed, and she sensed that this moment would unravel truths she had yet to confront. The stage was set for discovery, both of her art and of herself. What awaited her, she knew, might just redefine her spirit one more time. And there, in the embrace of her newfound determination, Edna contemplated her next challenge. The time had come to face her rival once again, not through another moment of doubt, but this time, peer into the mirror of her own resilience. Edna stood before the mirror hanging in her studio, its reflective surface capturing the resolve carved into her features. The familiar insecurities simmered at the edges of her consciousness, but beneath them surged a burgeoning conviction. The upcoming exhibition was not merely an external display, it was a demonstration of everything she had struggled to confront: the tears she had shed, the laughter extinguished by fear, and the shadows danced around her resolve until they began to fuse into a kind of light. As she meticulously aligned her quilts, she felt each piece resonate with a story yearning to be shared. The overlapping fabrics, representing moments of her life, showed not only the tears that had pulled through pain but also the threads of joy that were woven together in colors vibrant and bold. Edna realized the act of crafting these quilts had become as significant as the narratives themselves. It was through creation that she confronted her internal landscape, worked through the pressing doubts, and even recognized the strength buried in vulnerability. She paced the studio, her thoughts swirling. Confronting her rival was no longer just about winning or losing, it felt increasingly tied to her authenticity. Would she emerge victorious in defining her worth, regardless of how someone else perceived her? The rival was a shadow of self-doubt personified, a mirror reflecting the fears she wished to set free. But now, with the exhibition looming, it became clear that the actual confrontation would require bravery beyond what she had envisioned before. In the days leading up to the exhibition, nights melted into creative sessions where Edna stitched until her fingers ached. With each movement, she dwelled on the narratives entangled with her rival's disdain. Surely the underlying jealousy spoke volumes about both of them. Edna understood then that what they yearned for was the same: to be seen, accepted, and celebrated. And so, against a backdrop of parallel stories, her collection grew, a tapestry of shared experiences rooted in pain, weaving in resilience like golden thread against blue sorrow. The night before the exhibition, Edna wrestled with insomnia. Her heart raced not with worry but anticipation. Questions pricked at her: what if her rival confronted her? In the past, she had shrunk at moments of provocation, fearful of losing ground. But now there was an undercurrent of strength pulling in her resolve. If her rival approached, what would she say? She envisioned not a confrontation laced with bitterness but a dialogue that transcended their mutual enmity. Morning light spilled through the windows, casting a warm glow against the fabrics hanging around her. Edna stood before her quilts, each piece a fragment of her story. The feeling of protection infusing the studio enveloped her like a warm embrace. She spoke softly to her quilts, words tumbling out that echoed her newfound philosophy. I will not let fear dictate my truth. As the exhibition began, Edna mingled among the guests, her heart thrumming with excitement and trepidation. Abiding by the newfound clarity woven into her very fabric, she focused on sharing her artwork, but the anticipation of facing her rival felt palpable. Their last encounter had left scars, but Edna confronted those remnants with a fierceness that caught her off guard. If she could navigate the daunting encounters ahead with grace, she might open a door, not just for herself, but for others like her. And then, just as the crowd began to settle, Edna caught a glimpse of her rival across the room, a figure draped in an aura of defiance and challenge. The fabric of the moment shifted as Edna took a deep breath, her mind racing. Would she retreat into fear or embrace this new possibility with open arms? Ready or not, it seemed the time had come to discover what lay beyond confrontation, into uncharted territory where understanding might flourish, just as it had with every stitch she had woven into her life's tapestry. Edna's breath caught as she locked eyes with her rival. The air around her charged with unspooled tension, weaving an invisible thread that connected them both in a manner far deeper than she had ever anticipated. She could feel the pull of history, the harsh words spoken, the competition that had felt like a war, and the painful pang of jealousy shared between the two women. Yet, instead of shrinking away, Edna stood tall. Her heart raced not with fear, but with an unexpected exhilaration. This was her moment, one that could either spiral into chaos or bloom into something transformative. Clenching her fists to steady her resolve, she briefly closed her eyes, summoning the courage she had stitched into every fiber of her quilts. As she opened her eyes, she moved through the crowd, each step feeling more deliberate, more anchored in purpose. With every participant she passed, she focused not on their judgment but on the stories etched within her quilt pieces that deserved to be revealed. Each moment added depth, stitching her together with a sense of community that transcended competition. Edna. The voice was as challenging as she remembered, but now it rang with a stark vulnerability she wasn't expecting. Her rival approached, a wry smile dancing across her lips. I see you've outdone yourself this time. Thank you, Edna replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Your work is always impressive as well. A part of her expected the encounter to spiral into a clash of egos, but instead, she felt an odd flicker of kinship. They were both artists, inhabitants of the same battleground of self-doubt and fierce ambition. I've been thinking about our last competition, her rival continued, a note of regret filtering through her bravado. It's exhausting, isn't it? Always needing to compete. The admission hung in the air, inviting yet terrifying. Edna sensed the potential in this unexpected confession. It could either serve as a bridge or a barrier, depending on how she chose to respond. Maybe we could stop competing and start collaborating, Edna suggested, the words spilling out before she could second-guess herself. The thought hadn't fully formed in her mind, but a flicker of excitement ignited within her. Her rival appeared taken aback, eyes widening. Collaborate? You mean? Edna nodded, her heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. This was the leap of faith she had been preparing for all along. Think of what we could create together, Edna suggested, her enthusiasm bubbling over. Two perspectives interwoven could tell a more complex story than either of us could alone. A fabric of vulnerability began to mend over the past's wounds between them. I'll think about it, her rival replied, with a contemplative air settling between them. The proposition broke through the armor of animosity, and Edna could almost hear the tentative clicks of a new narrative weaving itself through possibility. In that moment, standing among her quilts and the murmurs of comrades beneath the gallery's lighting, Edna felt a deeper shift within. This was not just about her art or even the competition. It was about redefining her relationships, transcending their histories, and cultivating a space where resilience could flourish for both of them. But just as hope began to bloom, a sudden noise erupted. The gallery door swung open with fervor, an unwelcome chaos disrupting the tender connection they had forged. A uniformed figure entered, announcing an unforeseen emergency that thickened the air with dread. Edna's heart plummeted. This was not just a personal journey anymore. As the crowd erupted in confusion, the fragile threads of community and understanding began to fray. Edna sensed that the moment of truth was approaching. What would emerge from the crisis ahead? Would she grasp it, or would her fears unfurl once more? Edna felt the urgency of the moment pierce through her resolve, demanding action as she faced the unknown crisis unfolding before them. Disbelief coursed through Edna as the officer's voice echoed in the gallery. We need everyone to exit in an orderly fashion. There's been an incident. Please proceed to the nearest exit. The confidence that had surged moments ago began to unravel. People reacted instantaneously, a stampede of shifting bodies and chaotic shouts echoing the urgency of danger. Edna's gaze darted around, panic spilling into her veins as she noticed her rival, now a blurry silhouette in the frenzy, momentarily forgotten. The conflict between the need to escape and the instinct to connect powered through Edna as she hesitated. In the midst of the chaos, a woman stumbled near the entrance, her footing caught on a loose floor tile. Edna's heart raced. Every impulse screamed at her to forge ahead, to be free of the chaos, yet she found herself rooted in place. Something primal ignited within her, a call to action that transcended the immediacy of her circumstances. Help her! Edna shouted, pointing toward the fallen woman. It was a small spark of authority, but it surprised her just as much as it startled those around her. A few heads turned, and she felt a rush of resolve course through her. She rushed toward the scene, the air thick with uncertainty. Edna reached the woman first, her hands steady even as the world swirled. Can you stand? Edna asked, her voice firm despite the noise around them. The woman, face pale with fear, nodded but struggled to rise. On 3, Edna encouraged, counting down, willing her to muster the strength. With a swift heave, they made it to their feet, and Edna tightened her grip around the woman's arm, anchoring her reality in that moment of chaos. That act, so simple yet filled with purpose, opened something new within Edna. She thought of her old rival, once a source of strife and now the first joint effort towards something meaningful. The simple act of raising another could forge deeper connections, apply salve on old wounds, and nurture growing trust. The tide of people began to recede, and more participants joined her, following her lead. Together, they formed a human chain, guiding others out of the gallery. Instinctively, Edna directed her focus inward. She wasn't merely a bystander, she was a leader, her hands creating a ripple effect of courage amid turmoil. As she stepped through the gallery doors, the open air felt like a release. Yet, before relief could fully settle, Edna caught her rival's eye from across the street. They stood separated only by the swell of chaos, their expressions colored with a complex mix of fear and newfound respect. There, beneath the tension, was the recognition of bravery, not competition. The officer, now outside, started organizing the gathering crowd. Edna felt the weight of unfinished conversations. The potential of that collaboration still hung in the air, now weighed with more urgency and depth. What had started as a competition had morphed beneath threat into something deeper and uncharted. Edna realized she had embraced vulnerability, and through it, empathy. A sense of clarity broke through her clouded thoughts. A collaboration with her rival could not just change their dynamic, but perhaps could shift the very fabric of what their work stood for. "Let us do it," Edna whispered, knowing the decision was beyond words. It was about action. With her heart racing, she turned to her rival, ready to forge ahead. But as the officer began to address the gathering crowd, Edna felt a ripple of unease. Was this emergency merely a catalyst, or was there something larger at stake? A lingering question compelled her to dig deeper. She could sense that her journey wasn't finished yet. What truth awaited in the aftermath of this unsettling experience? Would it challenge everything she knew about her art, her journey, and the unexpected bond with her rival? Edna's uncertainty lingered like fog as she stood at the periphery of the crowd, the officer's authoritative voice now a distant echo. The gravity of the situation weighed on her, mingling with an odd sense of clarity. Could she truly partner with her rival? As she stepped out of the chaos, life seemed to slow, allowing her to process the tumult both externally and within. Her heart raced not only from the adrenaline but from the gravity of newfound possibilities. What would this collaboration entail? They had long been at odds, circling one another like wolves, each craving recognition yet threatened by the other's brilliance. Edna felt a certain irony. In a moment of collective peril, she saw the potential for unity, but could that translate into their professional lives? As she settled into the rhythm of the dispersing crowd, she felt her thoughts crystallize. This incident had been more than fleeting chaos, it had unshackled a dormant sense of agency in her. Leadership had once seemed a distant concept reserved for others, but the act of aiding the fallen woman had unlatched a door within her, revealing strengths she had often overlooked. She recalled how she had often hesitated in board meetings, letting her rival command discussions. But now she could feel the untapped well of conviction nagging at her, insisting it was time to confront that insecurity. Yet with the flicker of courage came a discomforting anxiety. Edna questioned the sincerity of her intentions in proposing collaboration. Was it truly for mutual growth, or merely an opportunistic grasp from a place of weakness? Each question felt like a stone dropped into the stillness of her resolve, creating ripples of self-doubt. But she gathered herself, these feelings were part of the transition. Growth demanded confrontation, even if it meant exposing her vulnerabilities. Taking a deep breath, Edna closed the physical distance to her rival, who stood somewhat aloof, still processing the unfolding reality around them. She could see the tension in the other woman's posture, a mirror of her own ambivalence. How did they shatter the competitive facade that had defined their interactions? "Can we talk?" Edna ventured, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. The rival blinked, caught off guard, as if she'd been brought under the influence of Edna's unexpected composure. About what? She replied, eyebrows raised in skepticism. About what just happened. I think we could do something together, something meaningful. Edna held her breath, anticipating a rapid retreat or a hasty dismissal. Instead, her rival looked thoughtful, though Edna could recognize the blend of curiosity and reluctance in her gaze. Interesting proposal. What do you have in mind? The exchange hung between them, and with it, Edna's heart quickened yet again. This was more than just a professional overture, it was a confrontation with her own limitations and a step toward a new identity, not just as an artist but as a collaborator. I want to create a piece reflecting resilience, Edna said, suddenly inspired by the chaotic past hour. Something that encapsulates the struggle we just witnessed and our growth through it. Her rival's expression shifted. There was hesitation, but also recognition, a flicker of understanding that perhaps they had shared a profound experience that day, even if it hadn't been rooted in artistry. Then, just as the tension seemed to relax, the officer's voice returned, urgent and commanding, cutting through the moment. Attention, everyone. We need to gather contact information for follow-up. This incident might not be over. The words hit Edna like a cold splash of water. The urgency of looming danger was back, and so was her uncertainty. What if they got entangled in something larger? The unresolved conflict within her flared anew, blending caution with possibility. But the glint of determination in her rival's eyes flashed as she nodded. Let us talk after this. We have a lot to discuss. As Edna stepped back into the uncertain crowd torn between exhilaration and apprehension. She couldn't shake a feeling that this was just the beginning of a more arduous journey. What lay ahead required more than collaboration, it demanded vulnerability, trust, and the unwavering courage to confront deeper truths. The air buzzed with an electric tension, a reminder that ancient rivalries could indeed transform, but not without significant challenges. Edna pinned her hopes on that connection amidst the chaos, her heart racing with the weight of possibility and the knowledge that chaos could breed creativity. Yet, lurking beneath her initial excitement was another pressing question: what if this venture revealed something darker within both of them, shattering the very foundation they hoped to build together? Edna's mind whirled intensely as she rejoined the crowd, the officer's droning voice now a mere backdrop to the storm of thoughts racing through her. What lay ahead was a labyrinth of unknowns, both in the immediate situation and her burgeoning collaboration with her rival. Each step she took felt heavier than the last, paving a way laden with expectations and uncertainties. The crowd shifted around her, vibrant and chaotic, yet within it, Edna felt separate, almost suspended in a bubble of introspection. She had often overlooked her own ambitions, allowing self-doubt and a fear of confrontation to dictate her path. But this was different. Her intent to create something meaningful with her rival felt like a small act of rebellion against that fear. Could this collaboration actually challenge not only her professional trajectory but also her very identity? She couldn't shake the terror that gripped her as she contemplated the vastness of what they proposed. To delve into their shared vulnerability, to express it through art, it demanded more than technical skill. It required heart, a rawness that Edna had been hesitant to expose. Perhaps her opponent would never fully understand her motives or the weight behind her actions. Was this desire for collaboration truly altruistic, or a desperate bid for validation in front of the very person she had oftentimes wished to outshine? The officer's command to gather contact information reverberated in her ears, shattering the stillness of her contemplation. She quickly glanced at her rival, who appeared equally taken aback, the competitive demeanor slipping momentarily from her posture. Edna had to seize the opportunity. She couldn't let this window close without exploring it further. Look, Edna ventured, lowering her voice. This is more than just a project for me. I want us to explore our fears, failures, everything that leads to resilience. Our art should reflect not just triumph, but struggle. That is where authenticity lies. The rival examined her, uncertainty mingling with intrigue. Edna could see the skepticism creeping back, yet within it was a persistent hint of curiosity, a shared desire to express the chaotic unpredictability of life. Resilience is a potent theme, her rival conceded, her voice cautious yet engaged. But my perception of it and yours? They might clash. Edna nodded, feeling a spark ignite within her. Then we clash. We fight through it. That is how real creativity happens. Raspy edges create better contrasts, like in a good painting. We reflect on our differences. A brief silence lingered between them, marked by the pulse of their mutual challenge. Instinctively, Edna sensed that this was significant. Maybe their friction, the years of rivalry, could transform into a source of inspiration. Yet an undercurrent of dread began to settle. What if this exploration unveiled deeper, unresolved animosities? The conversation felt electric, filled with tangible tension. Edna took a moment to observe her surroundings: vibrant banners, buzzing voices, faces still recovering from chaos. Meanwhile, the officer's announcements now included further details about investigating the incident, reminding her that their surroundings were fraught with tension as well. Let us meet later. I think we can figure out the details, her rival finally said, breaking the mental gridlock between them, but Edna caught a flicker of weariness in her gaze. Also, if all of this leads to something darker, Edna added, conscious of the unspoken fears, we need to be prepared to navigate that. It's part of the deal, honesty, no matter how uncomfortable. Deal. The rival extended her hand, and Edna felt a jolt of commitment surge through them both, a silent acknowledgement of the complexity ahead. As Edna walked away to find a quieter spot among the chanting crowds, she felt a wave of anxiety about their path. What inner demons would emerge during this exploration? She sensed that the turbulence she felt earlier would only intensify. Glancing back over her shoulder, she caught sight of her rival, who stood rooted, seemingly contemplating the same uncertainties. This was not just a project, it was a journey into the recesses of their history, and with each step, Edna realized that understanding oneself meant facing frustrations, not escaping them. But the darkness they might unearth could potentially swallow them whole. What awaited her on this precarious path? Was she genuinely prepared to confront both her vulnerabilities and those of her rival? Perhaps the greatest revelation would be recognizing just how deep their connection truly ran through conflict and collaboration. But as Edna prepared for their next meeting, one question loomed large in her mind: would they uncover the strength to redefine their relationship, or would the shadows of their past bring them both to a breaking point? Edna Baxter stood before her new creation, an expansive quilt stretching out across her studio floor, embodying both the turmoil she had faced and the triumph she had achieved. After weeks of collaboration with her former rival, this piece had transformed from mere fabric into a tapestry of resilience and strength. Each stitch told a story, intertwined colors, representing pain, joy, and shared humanity, revealed the complexity of their journey. The process hadn't been easy. Edna had to confront not only her own vulnerabilities but also the raw truths of her collaborator. The discussions had often unraveled into heated debates, shadows of their past rivalry creeping into conversations. However, rather than retreating into competition, they had forged a path of openness. Edna reflected on how her initial fears had shifted to a determined commitment to authenticity. Boundaries once distinctly drawn had blurred, allowing them to explore their emotional depths. What started as apprehension had blossomed into a profound understanding that echoed in every thread. In confronting their histories, they had unearthed mutual scars, some still raw, others healing, and from these, they cultivated a new narrative rooted in a collective commitment to creativity. Edna, her rival's voice cut through her thoughts, once tinged with skepticism now softened by camaraderie. I honestly never thought we could create something so beautifully intricate together. It's empowering. Edna's heart swelled with pride. This was more than personal achievement, it was validation of her journey and growth. I never thought this collaboration could redefine me. It's an unexpected gift, she admitted. The quilt before them was a testament not just to their artistry but to their transformation, a tangible representation of their newfound respect for one another. As the exhibition day approached, Edna braced herself for the spotlight. They had decided to showcase their quilt as the centerpiece of their presentation, a bold statement against the backdrop of their rivalry. Her earlier fears of being perceived as merely a hobbyist had been replaced by the confidence that stemmed from their collective work. On the big day, Edna stood with her rival, both dressed in shades that complemented the quilt's vibrant palette. The gallery hummed with anticipation as attendees admired their creation, fingers tracing the intricate designs, eyes filled with curiosity. When it was time for their presentation, the room quieted, the energy palpable. "Hello everyone," Edna introduced, her voice steady and serene. "This quilt is not just a piece of art, it's a journey of growth, collaboration, and unity, a representation of what happens when we embrace our vulnerabilities." As she spoke, Edna could see recognition transform into understanding among the audience. The quilt story resonated, bridging their lives to the shared human experience. Her eyes caught sight of her former rival, and they exchanged a nod, a silent acknowledgement of their journey, one that had been fraught with challenges yet ultimately redemptive. After their presentation, attendees flooded them with praise. Those who had once labeled them as competitors now spoke of the beauty of their journey, commending their courage to confront personal demons together. Edna felt the rush of validation wash over her. She had broken through the barriers that had long confined her. By the time the event ended, Edna and her rival shared a moment in the quiet of the gallery, the chaos of the people now mere background noise. "We did it, didn't we?" Edna asked, barely able to contain her excitement. "Yes, we did," her rival replied, a smile breaking across her face. "And we've only just begun." In that moment, Edna understood that her transformation was not merely about achieving success, it was about redefining relationships, embracing shared vulnerability, and discovering the strength within collaboration. As Edna gazed at the quilt, she marveled at the journey that had led her here. She had conquered her self-doubt and stepped into recognition, claiming her place not just as an artist, but as a partner in creation. She had proven to herself that art was a powerful medium for resilience and connection, revealing that even amid chaos and conflict, beauty could emerge. And so, with her heart light and her spirit soaring, Edna took a final look at her masterpiece before the exhibition closed, ready to embark on the next chapter of her life, one woven not only with threads of fabric but with the unbreakable bonds of understanding and collaboration they had forged together. Now is the moment to seize this inspiration. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will move your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and share the journey of resilience with others. Comment your reactions and theories about Edna's remarkable transformation in the comments below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and ignite their own journeys of growth and empowerment. Don't wait even one more second. You need to show your support and be part of our story.